Direct from the Six, world-renowned, Canada's largest city, with Canada's biggest thinkers, visionaries, and hustlers. This is Startup Talk, featuring the founders, funders, innovators, and community leaders who've led Canada's startup ecosystem right here in Toronto. You'll hear the challenges, the failures, the successes. Toronto's Startup Podcast gives you the full story direct from the entrepreneurs and influencers who've made a difference. Now, the host of Startup Talk, the founder of Toronto Starts, the Startup Coach.
Will it be harder to get angel and VC funding in 2024? Are they losing?
I actually really want to talk about this, but I actually I don't have actually that much to say about it. I was really curious to hear what you guys think, because Craig, what you mentioned in the shuffle of the orders there, that was my only good point, and then you stole it, you jerk. So
I'm sorry. I am jerk.
Basically, when you're talking about what the advice is for to secure funding, and that's the only thing. And I haven't fundraised, I haven't gone to the market. But I talk to a lot of people who do. So my experience is really different, right? But absolutely, like your point was going to be my only valuable point, which was really like to get in the market, to get out there as fast as possible, to get like all the cliches, but it's so true, right? And I'm learning that, just to really get there, get real users, get feedback, set up your LOIs, and like make it real and like learn and pivot quickly, right? So that was the only little trinket of wisdom that I had to offer. But I'm really curious because you guys, I think, speak to even more founders and startups than I do, which seems kind of crazy because I think all of us combined is like a big network of startup connections. So I'm just really curious to what you guys think in terms of, what does the outlook feel like for this year compared to last year, which I think everybody kind of agrees was pretty terrible and rough. How do you feel? What do you think about what's coming? And what do you think are those tips for people to kind of improve their chances beyond what we know about kind of just establishing a kind of reliable pilot and MVP?
Yeah, I honestly think like with the global economic conditions, they're making it harder for startups to raise angel and VC funding compared to back in 2021 when we had very low interest rates. However, I think there's still opportunities. And what I'm actually seeing is I'm seeing these new VCs, these new funds popping up that are specific for I know one that's raising right now in the US that they're specific. There's three things: women, health, and AI, which is great. And I love more women focused, BIPOC focused, minority focused VCs. I think there's a huge disconnect there. I think it's even more difficult for them. But I think that the biggest thing for success for if
stop touching whatever you're touching.
If you're looking for angel and VC funding is connect with investors who get you. That's the biggest thing. Like you can work on your pitch deck all day long. You can talk to investors, but if they don't get you, if they don't get what you're trying to provide, then you're not going to get the funding. So your business model, you got to make sure you have the right landscape, and reach out. And there's tons of people who are willing to give you advice, give you feedback, different things like that. So you don't have to go in front of VCs or angels and be told no 50 times before you're successful. Maybe you reduce it to 10 or 20, but it is much more difficult in Canada to raise funds, absolutely, than it is in the US. Absolutely, 100%. And Craig, I think you agree with me on this.
Absolutely. There's just way more money available in the US. They're willing to take more risks. We are way more risk averse in Canada. And the investors I've talked to this year all have said the same thing. They're less about chasing the dragon this time, right? They're not about pumping money in to see future returns on a non-revenue making startup. This is, we've seen so much pump and then failure. We talked about this briefly before, John. I think on Future Tech, we were talking about there's a shift in fewer investments and bigger checks. So what that means is we're not investing in earlier stage startups nearly as much. from a VC point of view, because we're writing bigger checks. So it's doubling down on the investments we already have in the industries we already have, or on farther along startups. So what does that mean? That means a startup needs to focus on value. They need to focus on getting to revenue fast, getting to traction any way they can. Letters of intent, pilots go a long way to show that you're serious, and that you're learning fast, right? Like I said earlier, when we were on a earlier segment, your valuation as a startup is significantly different before a pilot and after a pilot, depending on the pilot and depending on what you're doing, because there's so much you learn, so many things. Like I was talking to somebody about this and say, okay, there's a difference where you are now when this is an idea, and a month from now where you've done a pilot with 2 companies and you've done 100 transaction each, and you know what your ROI is per transaction, you know what this, and you're getting feedback, and you know the whole system works. There's a bunch of things that go wrong that you have to learn to make sure everything, fix things, those things along the way. You're much farther along at the end of that pilot, even with 2 clients, than you were before. Like, you've actually proven that you can do something, that it can work, that, there's bugs to be fixed out. So people need to focus on getting there rather than, why can't I find money for idea? Like, I've had people come up to me and say, well, we've come to one of your networking events and we didn't find an investor. So like, okay, so what does that mean? Does that, the rule of thumb is you have to meet with 100 investors in 5 weeks if you want to get, 100K or more investment. This is kind of how it goes. So you have to have a reasonable expectation in going in. And we were talking about skin in the game earlier. If you're not putting money and investment into your company, but you're expecting other people to put $1 million in, you really need to start thinking about what the value of your company is and moving it farther along, like getting revenue, getting clients, getting letters of intent, even going farther. There's a lot of ways out there. Do crowdfunding campaigns if you're launching a product or whatnot to prove there's a market for it. Look what R1 did. They did pre-orders. They got over $8 million for the Rabbit R1 and pre-orders already, and we haven't checked. They might be on batch 5 already, which, the money's just rolling in for them. It's crazy. And just from that, any investment they want, the investors are rolling out their money now. Like, it's been a week and they've got $8 million plus in orders. They had a $23 million investment back in October, but now they've really proven there's a huge demand for this.
Yeah.
Let's see if they can deliver, but take a look at that demo, take a look at the things they're offering people and see the value. And what are you offering as a value to startup? Do you have that kind of convincing painkiller type of product that is solving a need? And can you prove that there's a demand? You really have to do that more and more these days.
For sure. Just because you have an idea doesn't mean people are going to throw money at you. Just because you think you have a good idea doesn't mean people are going to throw money at you. I'm sorry, but we've got a generation of people now too that feel entitled as well. And it's spilling over into the founders world. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little bit negative here, but like people need to get their head on straight and realize that people aren't just going to throw money at you just because you're enthusiastic and you have a great idea. You don't even have an MVP. Like, you've got something written down on paper. No, sorry. You've got to put in the work. You've got to put in the blood, sweat, and tears into it. And it's always going to be the case. Sure, you can use tools like AI to help you get to that MVP 100%. But if you are expecting people to invest in just you because you have an idea without a track record or anything, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's funny. I was only laughing, John, because that was one of my notes for one of the other sections about just the kind of attitude, right? Unfortunately, and like kind of that's how that's evolving. But I didn't want to be the downer, so I was like, I won't say it, but you did. So now it's okay. But I just think I see what you guys are saying. Like that's also been what I see and have experienced and see happening. All those points, to your point there, John, what you're saying too, like, even if there is a need and a market, we forget that, right? Like, it's the blessing and the curse of, again, technology being so easy and accessible and low barriers to entry that, like, even if you have a great idea and there is a market, and even if you've built your MVP, like that doesn't in any way guarantee any success. Nope. Unfortunately, there are 100 companies doing exactly what you're doing. And like, I don't know about you guys, it actually like breaks my heart because I meet so many founders who do have great ideas. And again, you guys probably meet tenfold who I do, who come and they're like, I have the great idea for the next blah. And, you know, like this is, I feel really badly not to name names because there are actually so many of them. But if I meet like one more founder who tells me how they are going to like change fintech with their payment processing, like that's just one example. But that one, I literally, it's like, I feel like it comes up 10 times a day where I meet people who really do, and they're smart. Like it's not to belittle them or their business, like their product and their service is super smart. It is going to make things faster, better, cheaper, all the good stuff. But like, so what are you going to do? There are 100 other companies who are doing that also. And so this like awful kind of race to market and really like differentiating yourself. Right. So, you know, I just think it's frustrating. It's like the best of times and the worst of times. It's great that there's so much innovation. There's so much positive change happening and so much ideation and good stuff. But it's tough, right? From a business perspective, because we know that, you know, 95% or whatever the number changes all the time, but like 95% of those businesses won't make it and they won't be here in 3 to 5 years. And, you know, so that sucks. So, you know, as the founder or the investor, like on either side, right? We all want to kind of see those birds succeed and get out there. So it's tough. It's going to be tough. Yeah. Oh, I look at all these fancy little pieces.
Just playing with the things. I wasn't sure what the differences were there.
But
John,
like, and on the flip side too, like the other problem is there's a lot of people who have good ideas who don't have the connections, who don't know where to do with it, and we lose out on those ideas too. So, but yeah, I think there needs to be an awakening of I think it's good that we're shifting a little bit because I think it's going to make people think more about their idea, put more effort into their idea. I'm hoping. Well, I'm not. I don't think. I'm hoping. And have lower expectations, and maybe get them to think. I hate using this word. Think outside the box, but get them to think outside the box. And like Craig said, like go to Indiegogo or crowdfund if you think you have a good product, or like try bootstrapping, try friends and family. Like there's other options. If you really believe in your idea and you think other people believe it too, then get them to put the money where their mouth is at the start to get you to the point where you can get in front of a VC or an angel investor. But
you know, and I love that because I think we've all done that. And it's like, right, like put your money where your mouth is. You have to kind of believe in yourself and go out there. You know, the other thing, goodness, I was having a chat earlier today with another startup founder, a woman who's grown her own business exponentially in the HR and recruitment space. And so we were having a similar chat and talking about, success and what that looks like for founders and startup land, all these things. Anyway, and well, again, you guys, I go to a bazillion pitch events just because I love them. I go to any pitch I can because I just think it's so interesting. And, their jury's still out, right? When people talk at pitches, you always hear from the investors. Again, it's different, I think, from a VC or an angel, depending right on what stage they're looking at. But, like there's always this cliche of saying like, well, why do people fail? And so the argument is always depending on the opinion as well. But, they say that, your startup is going to fail either because of the team, right? And then the other half of the folks will argue that it's they have the team, but they'll fail for execution, right? And this is like the ongoing kind of story that we're told of like, why do startups fail? It's going to be some combination of one of those. Either you don't have the right people or you weren't able to deliver. Pretty much it's the same story, right? I guess it's just depending on what you label it. And it's just really interesting because, and this is a bit of a shameless plug, but I think for all three of us, right? Coach, consultant, advisor, whatever you want to call all of us, that's what we're all here to do, is like help businesses and founders and startups like go through that process and make it and be successful. And I think just, like what you were saying a lot earlier is like I wish that, I guess, like investors and VCs saw all of us as part of, like, in this startup ecosystem as partners. Because like sometimes I face, and I'm sure you may see this too, like some investors are a little bit more territorial, right? It's like, well, we have our incubator, we have our accelerator, they've gone through our program, blah, 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 blah. But that's the thing is, right, to like actually do this and to launch a successful startup that's going to make it for, have a significant impact and see that growth that everybody kind of dreams of. Like it takes a lot. So I just think, I think I'm looking forward to hopefully, working with investors who kind of can see that investment where it's like, okay, not only are they given some cash and writing a check to a founder and like hoping that pans out, like hopefully, we can start seeing on the investment side people who are also willing to kind of commit to the whole connection, the kit and caboodle, that like, yes, you'll get the founder, you'll get the startup, but hopefully that person comes with a network of advisors and coaches and people ready to support them so that they can like see their own blind spots and actually improve on the areas where they're lacking, right? And I think that that's something that you guys can do, that we can all do, to like give everybody more of a chance, to improve the odds of finding of not only getting an investment, but then also like doing some good with that investment and really taking off and being successful with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, and it's controversial, but it is what it is. Ideas are worthless. I got an idea. I hear that all the time. Great. I get ideas all the time. I got 5 voices in my head shouting at me different ideas while I'm talking to you right now. None of them are valuable. It's execution that matters. So when investors are looking at you, saying, I got an idea why I want to invest, like, what have you done? What your idea is useless. You have to show that you can execute and you can deliver on the idea. Do you have a background in this? Are you an expert in this area? Do you have there's 1,000 things you should be doing. I don't know how many times I've heard people, these are a couple of quotes, I get these days. I'm going to be a YouTube star. Okay. First question.
Me too. Starting with you in this show right now.
This is what I hear. I'm going to be not me, but this is what I hear from a generation of people. And I say, great. How many videos have you done? And they just look at me. But you haven't done a single video, but you're going to be a YouTube star. Like, great. That's your idea. My idea is I'm going to be a YouTube star and I'm going to sit here and do whatever. And eventually some big film person's going to take those videos of you and post them. And how's that going to work? Right. Then another quote I get all the time is when people ask me about my podcasts or whatever, they're like, oh, it's my goal in life to start a podcast. And almost every single time I burst out laughing because it takes 2 freaking minutes. It literally takes 2 minutes. Open up your phone, press record, go. Right? Like, what do you mean life goal? Like, are you waiting for years to do this? This is the problem about ideas. Like, I got this idea. Great. But you haven't even recorded a single thought. You haven't posted a video. You haven't started a blog. You haven't done. People come to me and all the time, and they want me to help them. And here's my rule now. And it took a while for me to develop this in the last few years. Is I won't do any more work on your company than you have done.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good rule.
That's the other thing too.
That seems like a pretty low bar.
Yeah.
And like, I understand it sounds like a pretty low bar, but people have come to me. And they have this idea, and then I start asking them questions like, "What about this? What about this?" Like, I'm like, "Okay, I'm done." What do you mean? It's like I've already thought about this more in the last 2 minutes than you have in your entire life. So please go away and think about this and stop wasting my time.
Well, it's not so much wasting time because like you're helping because even though they have an idea, they don't know where to start a lot of times too, right? Mm-hmm. So asking them those questions gets them to really think about their idea, whether or not it's something they want to pursue, whether or not it's something they want to, or it's too much for them and they abandon it.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, kind of my problem.
Yeah. John, you're a nice guy. You're a nice guy. I don't know. I'm in Craig's camp. Like, I get immediately infuriated when people are just like, oh, I have this great idea. And it's like, okay, and what have you done with this idea other than take 10 seconds to tell me that sentence.
Yeah.
That's where it ended.
Yeah, and I guess the difference is when people are coming to me, they want me to work with them. And when I start asking questions, they haven't put 5 minutes thought on it. That's completely different than coming and ask me, I got this idea. Where do I start? I'm happy to, like, I teach idea validation. I'm happy with, you got an idea. I'll give you 30 different ways to go out and test that idea. I'll help you with your pitch. I'll help you with 100 different things. But you got to do the work and you've got to think through the idea. And I'll have those conversations with you. But I'm talking about people who come to our events and they're pitching their idea and they're this and they're like, okay, this is my thing. And they're out there promoting it. And they want your help advising them on the business. And like, there is no business here. You haven't even thought about it. Like, what are you're a wantrepreneur, make some movement in the execution phase. Do some research. If you realize you're there, I don't know where to start. Great. Let's start building a roadmap together. We'll start with a business canvas, figure out what assumptions are. How do we validate those assumptions? Where do we go? Let's get going. But most of the time people think they're beyond that. They just have an idea and want money, or they have this or they have that. And it's like, well, okay. Like you haven't even thought about any of this stuff. You really need to. Starting a business is work. It's not just sitting around in a cafe. You drink half a cup of coffee and this is my business. I got an idea, right? Like this is the problem.
I think that's what how do you rename them? That's what this podcast should be called. Based off it's what startup life isn't, like, just dispel the myths. Yeah. Because I think you're right. Like, honestly, Craig, and John, you're a founder now too, but you just like seeing it with so many people, right? I do think that there's this, I mean, I do, like, I have love-hate, right? Like I love that there's this kind of like sense of, founder pride and entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial spirit. And like, there are a lot of things that are very real about that, right? About the experience and needing to support and be supported by others, because it is really tough. But there's also, like you said, like there's just this totally glorified concept of like, I have a great idea. Like it came to me in my sleep, or, whatever it is, you're supposed to be like deeply motivated by this great pain that came to you. Like, oh, I had my aha eureka moment. And then all of a sudden I just like stayed up all night, like coding, because like 90% of the time it's tech startups, right? And so you like had this great problem, and then you went to bed and you couldn't sleep because you were so excited. You like went to your computer and then drank tons of coffee and like, coded the night away. And now you woke up and you have this like MVP or prototype, and you just want to like tell people, I've written this genius magic. Like, here's my unicorn. Where is my Uber? Where, like, and now make me a gajillionaire and like make my business profitable. And why am I not rolling in it? And it's just like, I don't know, we have so far to go for people to get that, like, that's not real. Like that doesn't happen. And even for all of us, like, there are so many wonderful unicorn tech stories, but like we forget that all those big companies, they still had 10 years in a basement of sleeping on each other's couches and eating pizza and not knowing if they were going to pay the rent. Like most of those big, like tech unicorns that we talk about went through that too. And we just don't talk about it at all. We forget that.
Yeah. But this year's tech darling is next year's failure. Like how many startups have we seen praised? This is the biggest startup in Canada. Next thing you know, they're laying off thousands of people. They're closing down. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. They couldn't reach profitability. We see stuff with Uber. We see it with WeWork. We see these huge companies that aren't necessarily making money, but are out there doing things that people worship and think of as this glorious thing. We really do have to wrap it up. I know we've gone a little long, and some people do have other commitments. So I will wrap it up. But Alex, where can people go and find out more about you and consult?
Well, look at your flashy program here. As you can see, you can go down to, where is it? Cansalta, not an O, cansalta.com to find me and people much smarter than me, like John and hopefully Craig soon, that you can work with on your own fledgling startup and make it a fabulous, booming, Uber-esque unicorn down the road.
And John, I only got you on LinkedIn because I don't have a website for you.
That's the best way to find me. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm on there all the time. I got to get back to posting my articles. I've got tons in the queue that I have to post, but reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have government funding questions, any kind of question relating to startups that you might be scared to reach out to Craig. Just kidding. No, I'm happy to answer any questions. Happy to point you in the right direction. Yeah. If you want to geek out, I'll geek out. If you're looking for events, follow my feed. I post tons of different events. Craig's got an event coming up. Craig, I think it's next week.
Yeah, Startup Drinks TO, January 25th. We're back at Workhouse downtown. We're over 50% sold out. Should be a good event. And yeah, it's the first one in January. I've talked to 3 different investors that are new that are coming out that are interesting. One, I want to connect with you, John. Specifically.
Happy to.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on. And if you want to find out more, you can see John and I on the Future Tech podcast. We do it live Friday mornings on YouTube, but now they're going out 3 days a week, Monday and Friday, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, the segments. So you can listen there. Just Google Future Tech podcast and you'll find us. I also do Ask the Startup Coach podcast. It's daily doses where I'm answering entrepreneurial questions every day. They're 2 to 5 minutes. They're short. Upcoming, we have mentoring. Go to mentoringmagic.ca. We have a co-founder matchup event happening on February 14th. That'll be posted in the next couple of days. It should have been posted already, but I'm so behind on things. Check out everything else at torontostarts.com. I think I've covered everything. Thanks so much for taking the time today, everyone. This has been great. Thanks for those who watched. It's been a lot of fun. And thanks for everyone for watching Startup Face Off.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Alex. Great to see you guys.
You guys too. Great.
Bye, everyone.
This has been Startup Talk, Toronto's startup podcast. For more exclusive content, the episode vault, and to be part of Toronto Starts community, visit torontostarts.com. Get your name on the newsletter mailing list and check out our upcoming events. For more episodes, subscribe now. And please recognize the time and work behind the scenes put into connecting you with the biggest visionaries, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Toronto by leaving a 5-star review. Join us for more next episode from Toronto's most active entrepreneur and startup community on Startup Talk.